Circumcision, it was found that between 2008 and 2014, 504 initiates died in the Eastern Cape, Mpumalanga and Limpopo. Today, the Eastern Cape Provincial Government and the House of Traditional Leaders officially launched their winter circumcision season. Deputy Chairperson of the CRL Commission, Professor David Mosoma, now joins us from our Polokwane studios to discuss the report. Professor, a very good evening to you. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening to you and to your listeners.
Professor, what is the cause of the high number of deaths and injuries in initiation schools long after the proposed and implemented measures to try and reduce this trend?
In fact, already some of the causes the Deputy Minister have enlisted them, namely dehydration, lack of good food support, and other activities that are taking place within the school itself. And it has been found that, for example, some of the surgeons are themselves not qualified to do the work. So because of the illegal nature of the schools that gets convened or put together, kids go to these schools with a view that they will be initiated into manhood, and only to discover at a later stage that they are amputees, they are amputated, and some of them die through dehydration and other causes as well. So our view is that in the report which we released, we have shown that we have lost a lot of young people as a result of this. Now we say this must come to an end, because if this continues, or this phenomenon continues, it means the cultural aspect of initiation will be undermined and therefore discredited. Our role as a commission is to protect and promote. And we know that the culture of initiation bequeathed to us by our forebears was a very good example of a school where young men were to be initiated to become defenders of homes, of families, and defenders of society. And this is important, that it must continue. As a result of which, we are saying that if there is an illegal school that is taking place within communities, we call upon the traditional leaders to take full responsibilities that in their own environment, such persons should not be allowed to operate. If they know such persons that are operating, they should call upon the law enforcement agencies to arrest them, because this should be criminalized as a matter of agency.
Look, Professor, with that in mind, do you think that the current legislative and policy provisions are adequate enough to address the current crisis? What needs to be done?
In fact, we are calling for a new legislation in this regard, because the current legislation does not criminalize illegal initiation schools. As a result of which, these have become schools for commercial purposes, for many money-making schemes. So we want to make sure that these must be criminalized. Only schools that are convened with the authority of the traditional leaders, who themselves are known to be qualified to have these schools, should be allowed. And we know that in some instances we'll need also to find out that there are persons who have been to initiation school, who themselves are qualified to be able to conduct the work of the surgeons in those schools.
Professor, look, it's very interesting that you mentioned the criminal element of this, but according to a report, how many cases of deaths and other human rights violations are associated with initiation schools have now been reported, and has there been any convictions?
There has not been any convictions. I think the Deputy Minister mentioned that in terms of the current legislation, the illegal initiation schools have not been criminalized. As such, people are arrested, but they go scot-free. So in terms of our proposal, in terms of the document that we have produced, we want a legislation that criminalizes any attempt to open an illegal school and to commercialize on this traditional element of our society.
Professor, what support structures are in place for family members who have lost their children? How do they get solace?
Yes, we are of the view that the traditional leaders, the community structures, because SCRL, we have what we call the community councils, and in each society where these councils exist, we would want these councils to assist communities when they have this type of problems, in order to make sure that they are given counseling and given the support in order to go through this problem of losing their loved ones through this process of illegal initiations.
Professor, before I let you go, there are those, and you mentioned this earlier, there are those advocating for medical circumcision. And one of the arguments brought to the fore is the fact that culture is now being fluid and can change to be in line with modern society. What is the Commission's position on that?
Our view is that we have doctors that have gone through the initiation school themselves. They are better qualified to do this because it should not be any other person who has not been to the school itself, because part of what is happening, there's an element of secrecy in terms of educating young people about the responsibilities, about what it means to be man, what it means to defend society, and all of that. Part of that responsibility takes place in an environment within which these young people would get out to be ready to serve communities. So our understanding is that if a doctor has been to the initiation school, is better qualified to be able to assist in this regard.
Thank you so much, Professor, for your time. That was the Deputy Chairperson of the CRL Commission, Professor David Mosoma, talking to us about the report on male circumcision.